Can you tell us a little bit about who in your life influenced you?
I'd be happy to, Deb. I think that the three people I'm about to highlight are ones who definitely don't want attention drawn to them. And I would say initially that was my father. I know it was my mother and father as a pair, but as a person in a leadership position, in charge of many people and being required to do things that weren't necessarily popular, he exemplified how much he cared about doing what was right and what was going to make a better future.
Now, do I understand your father had a military background also?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was in even longer than I was in the military, about 35 years, and retired as a very senior officer. And I'm so proud of all that he accomplished. And I will tell you, though, to rise to the top, he was very fortunate to have some mentors that helped him along the way to be able to progress, because some of the things he did were not popular. Sometimes you had to shake things up because people were not being mistreated, for example. And he would go and oftentimes he'd do it incognito, and he would go out, and I would hear the stories of meeting with people and finding out that people aren't getting to get paid, or they're not giving the guidance that they need to be able to be successful in their job. And then he would explain what would happen, and sometimes there'd be negative consequences of my dad digging. And I think that what he demonstrated is he always cared about what people were doing and wanted to do what was right, not thinking about the repercussions that might impact him. And he was fortunate to continue to succeed because the people wanted to do so much for him and the projects that they had. So I think early on I had a very clear example of someone who really led with caring for the heart for our country, wanting to do what was right by our country. And so that patriotic flavor certainly was instilled in me very early on. There's three people, as I mentioned. The second person has to do with really the first person who influenced me once I went into active service. I was lucky to have, he became to the rank of Command Sergeant Major, which is a very high rank. At that time, he was a Sergeant First Class, and his name was James O. Scott. And he epitomized, I think, what we would hope to have found in the military as a leader. Never afraid to dive into things that maybe were unpleasant, but needed to be taken care of. One that worked with the people not only just to observe them, but to help them, give them a helping hand, and also hold people accountable. Because being heartfelt doesn't mean you let everybody get away with everything. His way of taking care of them and caring was to ensure that they understood their responsibilities, carried out those responsibilities, and then you would find he could read people's faces. And I told him he could read people's minds, because he would look at their face, he could read the signs, and he would help them. He could tell when people were off, and he would help them get what they needed, or he might just help them, inspire them in order to do what they needed to do in the job. And he did it by example. That's how he did it. And then the third one I have to talk about is my husband, who is, again, the last person who'd want you to know about that. But I think that what happens when you're a heartfelt leader and someone who does the example, they're bringing out the best in you as well. And there have been many times that when we're in leadership positions, you can care deeply, but sometimes you get slammed so many times that if you don't have someone else who understands what you're doing, why you're doing it, then you might not be able to be successful without that assistance. So I would say that my husband has continued to have an extreme influence on my ability to continue to understand that I had a good sense of what needed to happen in a situation, trust yourself, and go forward, because that's what you need to do. And oftentimes people can get stopped by sometimes the littlest of negative feedback or self-doubt or something like that. And I would say that in all cases, the three examples I've given you were someone who helped, or people who helped me strive to be even better each and every day.
The one gentleman who wasn't part of your family, Did you have a chance to ever thank him?
I would say that he knew how much I cared about him. I'd say that people who really make a difference in your life, you soon can share that. You're able to share that, not always in words, but certainly in how much you appreciate them. And he died too young. He died right before my second major command. And I do believe it was as a result of exposure during the first Gulf War, where he traveled maybe 100,000 miles. But I try to stay in touch with his family still, and I let him know how much he meant to me, and he always was there for me. Like I said, he had another sense, the sixth sense, to be able to know if I needed to talk to him when he was alive, and certainly left a lasting legacy with his caring and how much he did for people. I'd say that, one, I do have to address that appearances can be deceiving, because even under the best of conditions, people can be literally brought to their knees by a circumstance, by a setback, by a whole host of things that can happen. And I certainly have had far more than my fair share of times where you question everything about who you are. And even if the people are out there, that may not be enough for you to have the strength. I mean, it really, in thinking about it, I would say everyone has somebody else that's in the same boat, in the same situation, where it's never too late to change how you look at your situations, how you deal with the people in your lives. I'd say that there are some who wake up much later than others to discover that they had it always residing within them, just by what they've read, or maybe one single person who came in their life that they can look to and help model that behavior of who they want to be. And that being a heartfelt leader is so important for your own, well, your happiness, your feeling that you're making a difference, because a heartfelt leader is setting aside ego. The people who you see who may look successful, again, I say appearances are deceiving. They may look like they have absolutely everything. They may have the money, they may have the family, and yet we have over 30,000 suicides and have for many years a year for people who are just so stressed and have made that choice that that's their best option. And I would say, then I look at they do not understand they're already making a difference in other people's lives. And all I would suggest is that think about ways they can make an even greater difference in people's lives, and think about not from the head as this is what I ought to do, but from the heart in saying what feels right, and how do I know that is by paying attention and listening to others and paying attention to the signs that are around them. It takes courage sometimes to lead with your heart. It takes courage to be what I would say in the line of fire where people are going at each other, but doing it with that caring and that love that is out there. You can make a difference, even if it's only, my criteria was, if I could change one life, then I will have made a difference. And rather than making some big splash, is if we lead our lives each and every day and every choice that we make with that in mind, then we will be far more successful, not only personally, but those we care and love about and the new friends that we're going to make as the time goes on.